Brosplay!
Welcome back. There was something else I really wanted to talk about as far as anxiety goes. I'm fairly certain I have OCD in a few ways. And one of the weirdest ways is that when I leave the house, you probably noticed this, I have to check everything. I have to make sure that I never leave heat or air conditioning on when I'm out of the house. It's just like a really nervous thing. I don't know what it is. But I also can't leave without making sure that the doors or the windows are cracked open slightly for air for the cat, but closed enough so he can't escape through the screen. Like, he's never given me any reason to believe that any of this is going to happen, but every single time I leave the house, I have to make sure it's done.
Still worried.
I have to unplug everything. I even sometimes turn off power bars, and then I have to touch the stove to make sure that it's not on.
Really?
Even if I haven't used it for days, I have to touch it. And sometimes I have to open it and touch the grill. Like, that's like really extreme. That was the day that I realized I'm like, this is not just like a weird thing Mitch does. This is like part of my my subconscious. Like, it's like really hard for me to leave without making sure all of that's done. And the day I realized, whoa, that was fun.
That was interesting.
The day I realized that I had this, it was the day I started fixing it. I started to not let myself
check things.
Yeah, well, I would give myself like a one shot. Like, when I lock the door, it usually takes me several shots to make sure that I actually properly locked it. And I started to give myself one opportunity. And then I forced myself to focus on what I'm doing. And sometimes I have to say it out loud. I've never been this open on the show before. But it's important that people know they're not alone in this. Because I thought I was. I thought I was the only person who did this. Despite knowing about OCD my whole life, I never knew how broad it could be. Press truck. That's cool.
I think that there's a missing factor, I guess, is the word I'm looking for. Do I go bribe the Chinese? Because they're pissed.
Yeah, they seem pretty angry.
There's this missing factor that people don't seem to realize, is that humans are so heavily pattern-based.
Yeah.
That if you can test this if you want on your own. Let's say you eat a certain type of food that you traditionally don't really like. Like, let's say you're really not a fan of apples, but you eat apples only in moments when you're watching movies you like, or TV shows you enjoy, or having a great conversation. After a while, not only will you not hate apples the same way, you actually might really start to enjoy them.
Yeah.
Like, I've noticed that I'm trying to eat a lot healthier, and so anytime someone suggests any food, I just go, yeah, sure, whatever. Like, I mean, as long as they don't say, like, do you want to eat some moose shit, I'll go for it. Because the more you eat something, the more familiar you become with it.
Yeah.
And then after a while, you're like, I haven't had a fucking pepper in a while. Even though a year ago, I definitely wouldn't have eaten raw peppers.
I do that with music. Association with music is really heavy with me. And I'll find that music brings me right back to something. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Yes. That was neat. I find that I associate music so heavily that if I was going through a really tough time, it's like I won't even be able to think about that band or that music without remembering how I felt.
Or going right back to high school.
Yeah, and what I've been doing recently is just going head first into it. Just being like, oh, I was listening to that in a hard time, and I just go right into it and just listen to the whole thing and reassociate what I was doing with it. But then there's things like Sixth. I have no association with Sixth because I've listened to them playing so many different games. Some certain songs will still kind of give me, like, remind me of the games that I was playing when I first listened to them. But I've listened to them so much and so many times over in so many games and all that kind of stuff that now they're just Sixth to me.
Well, those same patterns, the idea that, you know how they say it takes, somewhere between 20 and 60 days to form a habit, and somewhere between 20 and 60 days to break it, depending on who you ask?
Oh, I'm pretty sure it's 3 days to form one and 21 days to break it or something like that.
See, that's the thing. I've literally heard 6 or 7 different versions of all those numbers. So, but the point is, it takes a while to form habits, and it takes a while to break habits.
Yeah.
And anxiety is a habit, whether you realize it or not, especially something like OCD, which is a compulsive thing. I remember I used to have this issue where I would check my pockets and I would count the
Yeah.
objects in my pockets.
Yeah.
So there was supposed to be 7 things, and I would count those 7 things maybe 5 or 6 times on the way out the door.
Yep.
And it was the same thing. It was only when I started going, no, you check them, they're there, and if you lose them, whatever, just fuck it. That was the only moment that I began to get over the need to check constantly.
Fuck me for trying is my new way of going about it. It's like if I lock the door, and then I turned the knob fully to the right, pushed on it, and pulled on it, turned it fully to the left, pushed on it, and pulled on it, and it's still not locked, then fuck me for trying. Like, at that point, like, there's no other better way to figure out that the door is locked than to break into your house in the other direction.
That's a really good point. Yeah, just when you lock your door, you just, like, try and open it. If it doesn't open, it's probably locked.
Yeah. Why would someone else be able to get into this any easier by turning the knob than me? Careful with this building. Okay, this is the infamous the last one murdered the last SEC agent.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. It's goddamn Chinese. It's such a dangerous place they live.
This is North Korea, dude. It's not China.
No, the Chinese base.
Oh, okay.
There's one road that's a decoy and goes to the middle of nowhere, and then there's all these buildings that just spawn in your way.
I love it.
Yes!
But what I found one day is I was checking my pockets for stuff, and I was saying the wrong words. Like, I, felt for my phone and said, all right, wallet. And then I was like, no, wait, no, that's a phone. Like, I don't know if I'm really checking things at this point anymore. I think I'm just looking for objects in my pockets.
Just looking for things. Yeah, and after a while, you almost start to lose your count. You're like, wait, did I count the second object?
Yeah, I check it too much. That's the problem. And it's stakes are the biggest thing. Like, the bigger the stakes, the more concerned I get. So if I'm going to the convenience store just like that's a minute away from my place, I won't check everything is fine because I'll be back. But if I'm leaving for a 9-hour shift, I'm really concerned that everything is okay because I'm not going to be here if anything happens. So it's really, like, there is a certain amount of logic in this illogical way of thinking. And I think part of it is all the times in my life where I walked through life going, everything will work out and nothing bad will happen, and then bad shit happened because I wasn't paying attention. And that stuff compounded over and over again, and the feeling of disappointing people when you're like, don't worry about it, and then bad shit happens and it was all your fault. Like, I still feel bad about not picking you up and driving you to your girlfriend's work. Still feel bad
Was
about
it a year ago?
That was like 3 years ago.
It must have been 2 years ago.
I'm not even friends with those people anymore. I was at a
that's
party,
funny.
and you wanted me to pick you up, drive you to your girlfriend's work where she had like a 15-minute or a half an hour break, and I left it to the last minute and then ran into traffic. But if I had left when I thought I should have left, I would have been there fine, and you would have got there and you would have seen her. But I got there, I drove all the way home, and then it was too late. And the feeling I had when I disappointed you was like, there's like the greatest level of disappointment I've ever had in my life. And that kind of displays just how easy I've had it. Because that's my greatest loss was that one time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on how you look at it. I guess for me, I've always been a person who I'm always hyper aware of how other people are perceiving everything.
Hyper aware, yeah.
And that extends to, I'm sure everyone's had this experience where you're at a party, someone's telling a story, and then pretty much everyone at the party just interrupts them and stops listening to them. So for me, I just don't find that to be acceptable. But also, a party's not the time where you admonish people for not listening.
Yeah.
So you just pay attention. You just fill in that gap.
Yeah, be the one person.
And the one thing that's always helped me is realizing that, A, life goes on, and life is way too goddamn long. If you're worried about life being too short, believe me, it's not how it's gonna go. You're gonna be around, you're gonna be tired, you're gonna be done working, you're gonna be over all these decisions. You're just gonna wanna sit on a fucking patio and wait until a meteor comes and smashes you into the ground.
Most people will become bored. Like, most people will live long enough to see boredom.
I have a buddy who believes that he wants to put his brain into a computer so he can live forever.
Ooh.
And I said, man, what are you gonna do? Let's just ignore the whole, all your family is gonna wither and die, right? Because that's like the classic sort of immortality issue.
Yeah.
Ignoring that, what are you gonna do after a few centuries when you've seen all these cycles and you understand the Earth better than anyone else? Who are you gonna talk to about that?
I think for the most part, you don't want to use that free one, yeah. I think for the most part, immortality is a dream of youth and or people who just want to get a lot of stuff done. Like the one immortality one that I really liked, despite not really liking the movie, was that I can't remember which Mummy movie it was. I'm pretty sure it was the last one. There was like a huge gap between the Mummy movies, but the guy realized he had not enough time in his life to do as much as he wanted with his country. Like he couldn't conquer enough in one lifetime, so he tried to get immortality. Like that's one of the only situations where I thought like that's a reasonable reason to a reasonable reason. That's a pretty good reason to want to live forever, is to like, you want to accomplish something with the grand scale of the world instead of just saying, well, I really enjoy sex, drugs, and rock and roll and don't want it to end.
Yeah, well, I guess there's a sort of weird misconception that when something goes wrong, it's going to stay wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's always just been, we can make it work. It's always just been, well, you know, if we get there and we actually, you know, if I'm going on vacation and I'm like worried that I have all my shit, I always just go, well, if I don't have it, whatever, I'll buy a toothbrush.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually remember one time I forgot one of the most important things. I forgot my phone charger.
Ooh.
And I went and bought a phone charger.
Mm-hmm.
Like life can be simple if you want it to be.
Yeah, well, yesterday I felt like I had just, well, I work long days and they're usually exhausting, and I always think to myself, I'm going to do so much with my day off. And then when I don't, I build up the day off to the point where I have to pretty much do something extraordinary in order to feel like I've done something with it. And yesterday I felt like I had failed myself, and I looked back on it and I did a bunch of shit. I did like a second voiceover. Dude, I never do second voiceovers. That's why I'm not super proud of a lot of the stuff that I've made on the channel that's like put together. It's like typically do a single voiceover and then go, well, that's good, and then I have like a single draft and go, well, that's good, and then I look back on it and I'm like, I could have refined all of that. But I did a second draft of it. I cleaned a bunch of shit. I went to the gym. I organized a bunch of stuff, and I only when looking back on it did I feel like I actually did something with the day.
And that's the thing, you have to do that. You have to look back and just think, forward and backwards. You have to think what actually happened.
Yeah.
What actually will happen. Because I know a lot of people will get anxious about things, and I'll just say to them, like, what are you worried about actually occurring?
I mean, I wish you were with me more often, because that's the type of person I imagine is with me. I try to think about the worst circumstance. Like, I live 15 minutes away from work. So if I fuck up and I don't notice that I'm supposed to work, like, I'm only 15 minutes away. It still sucks because I'm the opener, so the store is going to be fucked if I don't get there. But let's just say I were to work, like back when I wasn't the opener and I was just a regular shift worker. If I just didn't come in for a 5 o'clock shift, they would call me at like 5:15, and I'd be like, shit, and then I'd be there for 5:30. Oops. Like, it's like, I would be so worried about missing a shift that I would check the schedule like 8 times on my day off, just to make sure I got that day off, as though I have a problem reading schedules, which are designed to be easy to read. That just goes back to the belief that all the times when I've believed that everything was fine and it wasn't, it just coalesces, it's probably not the right word, to believing that anytime I believe I am correct, I could be incorrect, and that drives me crazy.
Well, I think that's a good perspective to have, the idea that you could always be incorrect. That's water. I'm not going in there.
That is water.
But this is something that, this is going to sound like weird and bad advice, and I think it is weird and bad advice. But if you're someone who likes to take on fights, it's much easier to live life, because, and when I say fights, I don't mean fist fights. Fist fights, you can get hurt and all kinds of other stuff. But when it comes to people not liking you and you not liking people, the more you're okay with that, the easier life is.
Yeah.
Because then you can make decisions based off what's going to make you feel best. And for me, I include making other people feel good as part of what makes me feel good. Right? When someone's being an asshole, I don't have to be nice to them, because that's not how it works.
In a lot of situations, I would rather people tell me their issue with me, because then I can explain myself, I can defend myself.
Yeah.
If they start talking shit to people, like, I've heard people at work tell me something, and I'm like, that is so not true about that person. Who the fuck told you that? And it's like, there are people who will just go around telling people shit, who will just make stuff up because they want, either they believe it and they want to convince others, or they want other people to, like, it's like, I do this all the time. Like, I want people to dislike the people I dislike, but I'm not going to lie about them to get that done. It's wonderful when somebody comes to the same conclusion as you, and they dislike someone for the same reason. You're like, fuck yeah,
And you can bond,
dude. My like you and Dane tie for best friends in the world, and Dane and I are only friends because we bonded over people we didn't like. We actually hated each other when we met each other, and we just one day realized that the guy who was bullying me in high school, the guy who was bullying me in high school got in a fight with him at one point, and he didn't like the guy the same way as I didn't like him, and he's like, look, buddy, if this guy ever gives you trouble,
you give me a call.
Just let me know. And I was such a pussy back then. I was like, but like if you do something, then they'll come back at me, and he's like, then I'll beat the shit out of them harder. And I was like, oh, I see. So every time they do something to me, you just do it back harder. And he's like, yeah. And like that was the first time I ever felt safe in high school.
Well, and there's another thing I realized is that, especially in high school, a bully could hit you, but what a bully doesn't realize is that a punch from anybody hurts.
Yep.
And they don't expect you to hit them.
Nope.
But what they also don't expect you to do is hit them viciously and hard, and then jump on them and keep hitting them, right? Because a bully's not going to do that. That's just fucked up. That's just weird. But if someone's bullying you and you beat the shit out of them, everyone's gonna clap.
Probably.
Right? So when you're the bullied, you kind of have an upper hand. As long as you are willing to get hit once or twice, you might get hurt, and if you get hurt, that bully's gonna get in a lot of fucking trouble. I mean, look at the world we live in.
Yeah, unfortunately, it ends up being the person who does the most damage that gets in trouble.
Yeah, that's very true. But, you know, if my son comes home and he's like, these kids were picking on me, and so I smashed this one, I'm just going to say, all right, well, take your suspension, and I'll get you cookies and ice cream for the day you have off.
Oh, dude, yeah, if my son came home and said, this kid's bullying me, I'd be like, Nick, tomorrow, punch him in the face. Don't even wait for him to bully you.
See what he does.
Like, you demand respect from this piece of shit, and the two of us will go and watch,
Respect my authority!
We'll go watch, I don't know, like Jaws 16 in theaters.
Yeah. And by the time this all happens.
Thank you for joining us.
I'm lost.
More polygonal mountains next time on Brosplay.